Good morning, everyone. I have to begin with thanking everyone who's present here today, especially Nandini, Nilesh ji and Pankaj ji. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation and making our event a success. Without your speeches, this keynotes and these discussions would definitely would have remained in telling your ideas, of course, in the upcoming sessions. Thank you very much, everyone. Visualized as the temple experience. I wanted to explain how we understand the temple experience. And then I gradually realized that the understanding is never really fully complete or done and checklistic. That never happens. So I changed my title to Trying to Understand the Temple Experience. In this, I wanted to talk about all the parameters that are actually required for a person to understand, to be able to understand the temple experience. Now, why temples in the first place? Why so much effort put into constructing these elaborate, so expensive and so intricate, so much efforts go into construction of these? Why are we doing so much efforts in this area? What is the purpose of it? What do we gain out of it? So in short, I think we have to talk about the experience here. When we visit, what is it that you feel acha laga? We all heard this. Bahut acha laga jagar. What is that thing that makes you feel that? So I'm just trying to explore, and I'm sure, just like me, you will have more questions than answers for by the end of the lecture. So the basic concept of temples, as we already know, it represents the macrocosm, that is the universe, and the microcosm, the anu, right? So this is the visual scale that we understand, that we can see. There's a range, right? There's a decimal range that we can hear. There is a visual range that we can see. Okay? We do not really see the solar system or the cosmos or the universe, and we do not see the atoms, right? So this is the visual scale we are talking about here. Within this visual scale, how do we understand or experience what is the nature of reality? Now this nature of reality phrase is very easy to speak. It takes half a second, but extremely difficult to explain. So to understand the nature of reality, I'm definitely not suggesting that the atom or the universe is replicated in the temple. We have seen in our school science books that the geometry and the equations are very different. But again, I come back to the experience or the feeling that is generated. Therefore, this intricacy, therefore so much efforts, therefore so much funds all the kings of ancient times have put into these structures. We will gradually see more. So first among the points that we need to understand the temple experience is the political history part. Whenever we are doing such a study, we do talk about the history first. But why? It's not just a drill. It's not the simplest way to start. It's not. What all do we need? We need rulers. We talk about the rulers here. Why do we talk about the rulers? Because the victors write the history, right? Because whoever is documented, whoever has the money, will actually tell the people, this is how we live. Hello, this is what I like, this is how we live. Everyone should live like this. So his inclination, his understanding of the world, his understanding of himself and his religion and his spiritualism and his ethics, everything he will depict in whatever he is constructing. So we have to understand who the ruler was at that point of time. Again, their reign and duration. Their reign, of course. Why did I write the word duration here? Simply because we've all seen that this, in our school books, what do we have? This has been built by Khajuraho, right? But you know what? I figured out very late in life that he ruled all of 4 years. Do you think this marvel of a piece, this campus, is possible to be built in 4 years? It is not. So I'll leave you with a question there. Region, of course, lineage, really very important. Now, if somebody is ruled only for 4 years, you have to look at the lineage. Who came next? Did he help his dad to complete it or his grandfather to complete it? Okay. Succession, yes. Inclinations and interests, as I already mentioned, extremely important for us to understand what his inclinations are, what he wants to communicate, right? Wars are a major in the sense that one thing is, it disturbs whatever artistic or cultural development that is happening, it disturbs. And secondly, so much funds get drained there, right? So when we study about wars, we have to understand that this is the period of the wars were going on. We have to understand whether there were any parallel constructions or not. Mostly you will find there were not. Or if you see in some areas, there are incomplete structures built. Maybe they were war struck. These things do happen, right? So this is how we would understand why this thing is incomplete, why this thing happened at this point of time. Even in history, when you will see some centuries, a lot of beautiful artwork and architecture work proliferating. But in some years, maybe not so much. So these are the ways how we understand. Loyalties and friendships. Loyalties and friendships, I have a very beautiful example. If you can see the images, the left side image, this is Khajuraho temple, right? And on the right side of the left image, you see two gopurams. You see one small gopuram and the extreme right is the larger gopuram. The right side image shows the larger gopuram which was built by the Marathas for this campus. This is how we have to understand loyalties and friendships. And of course devotion. So devotion, I have another point coming up, I will take it there. Devotion is whatever we are inclined to. I would help people understand, look, this is what gives me happiness. This is what I really love. Maybe you should experience or try this too. Now another point very important for every one of us to understand is, most of you all are already well versed with the concept of Vastu Purush Mandala. But I will just take it one notch ahead. We know the division of squares. We know 3 by 3 squares, 9 square mandala, we know 81 square mandala, and all the ranges are there in between, right? Now, it is not just about location of the deities. Okay? It is also about who sits next to who, what effect it has on the next one. Like, maybe it's poking a little. We don't know what's happening, right? So all these things are happening in correlation. So as I already said, compartmentalization not possible. Then why does a Vastu Purush Mandala has compartments? It just has some virtual lines, but they all influence each other all the time. So to understand, if you look at the top left diagram, you'll see some lines, right? So there are these various centers which actually give forces on the next squares, the squares next to it, right? So these forces are acting all the time, and there are these complex energy systems, energy centers forming in these squares. So this is how we need to understand the Vastu Purush Mandalas, and from there you will get to know which square mandala has been used for which particular temple. From there then we will understand what was the intention for the temple. Right? So as an effect of the previous slide, if you see, we have taken one basic square of 3 by 3 to the top, and if I take the center as the emanating force, just like the universe, it's an emanating force from the center going towards the outside. Look how it has been pushing the boxes outside in the left bottom image. This is how the boxes poke out, right? So now what is happening is, once this process continues over and over again, this is just one step. We will continue that process again with the tiny boxes. Then again the process continues with the smaller boxes, and we get this beautiful temple form. This is actually the Gandhara Mahadev temple that you will go around seeing here. Okay? Now we come to the form. We were talking about the plans as of now. This is the architect's fetish actually. We come to the form. Form, absolutely stunning, beautiful. We have to raise our head, look up. We are absolutely in awe of these temples when you first look at the temples. You will definitely experience when you go on the site. The form also, this form is created through the same process. If you see the top row of images, you have the same central emanation energy center that's poking everything out from all four sides, and then now you look at the bottommost image. Right? This is how in 3D proliferation happens. These will be known as Muni Pradis, where the major shikhara is emanating in the form of baby shikharas and smaller shikharas subsequently. And they kind of fit very beautifully on the surface of it. Another important point that you must study along with temple architecture is geometry. Now, sacred geometry in general is a subject which can cover 3-4 days of conference itself, but giving you just a little idea, we can start with sacred geometry. Now we've all done school geometry, right? In circle, circumcircle, congruence, all of those things. When does geometry become sacred? What is that makes it sacred? How does those little triangles, squares, rectangles become sacred? When there is meaning to it. When there is meaning to it. Because whatever is sacred is all in our mind. Sacred is created by our mind. So I will come to this psychology essence slightly later. But please remember, whatever we are doing is all to create the required experience. That is the final goal. Today, we go reverse. We first visit the temple. Oh wow, this was an amazing experience. I think this little phrase is very casually used very often, right? But now we are understanding what creates that experience. Okay, so when you visit day after tomorrow, you should remember all of these points and see there is that thing creating this effect in my mind, and therefore I am experiencing this. Right? So sacred geometry, biomimicry, extremely important topic. More concerned with sustainability and green architecture, but I want to implement it here because why do we have to mimic bio, that is living beings? Not limited to the human figures on the temple walls, not at all. What is biomimicry? Biomimicry is the underlying idea that reminds you of something biological. Now how does that happen? Simply speaking, the amount of complexity. Have you seen our modern buildings? Very smooth, minimalist, very stylish, Scandinavian they call it nowadays, right? And our temple buildings. The profusion of details. Don't you think that is the first step to start when we say अच्छा लगा? इसकी वजह से अच्छा लगा, right? And why? Why अच्छा लगा? Will we feel nice if there is any random patterns? No. They have been ordered and organized in a manner, in a particular proportion. And proportion next to each other, proportion with respect to how we see it, all of these. Right? So, now what is happening is, why biomimicry? Because our brain is basically, you all must have seen this golden ratio being applied in how we roll our fingers, and this way is to this whole thing. Correct? So, all these are golden ratios. There is a beautiful Fibonacci sequence where we look at our brain scans and all of those. Correct? You all have seen this, right? Now understand, if we use the same geometry in something exterior, this is the reason we actually feel, oh, we relate. Getting it? Now if I find somebody who also paints, I would tell them, oh yes, even I paint, that is so fun. That is so fun, right? So that is how we relate with each other, and therefore the geometry within our bodies, the geometry with which we are created, is replicated outside. So along with fractals and beautiful energy centers and all of the beautiful patterns, this is something that has been applied. Fractals, my all-time favorite subject. Fractals is simply put, there are many parameters when you talk about fractals. One of them being looking at a subject and looking at an object and seeing same amount of complexity from various distances. Right? So when we are approaching the temples, you all should focus on this when you are experiencing day after tomorrow. When you enter the temple, you will have a long shot, far view of the temples. Right? You look at that, you will be equally amazed, and when you go close, you will be equally amazed. Or what is happening is, on paper, mathematically, we have the same complexity value as found on the two images and all the images in between. Okay? So now again, please understand, I am not talking about pan sections or elevations. I am only talking about what we see. That means all the trees around are considered within it. Our distance is considered, the perspective, the foreshortening, the foreground, the background, everything is considered within it. Because when we as architects look at land sections and elevations, we become very obsessed with those beautiful drawings, right? But that's not how a visitor experiences. That is not how you will experience there when you Okay? We experience visually. So as of now, we're talking about only one sense, visual sense. Shapes and patterns, extremely important. Shapes and patterns have meanings, right? Again, I'm coming to meaning, it's all in our mind. A square is just a square until I tell you that it also represents the earth. A circle is just a circle until I tell you it is also the sky. And now, when you see a square and a superimposed circle, what will you think? Earth and sky together, right? Now it kind of starts to make sense. This is what we have to understand and remember. Therefore, these beautiful square shape, that is what we started with, and the energy centers that emanated in circles. Getting the groove of it, right? Number theory, extremely important. What is happening in this number theory is, we understand the correlation between certain chunks and leaves, certain number combinations. You all know 108 is an extremely sacred number for us. There are multiple reasons, we have various documents on it, right? Similarly, we have certain number sequences which make a lot of sense to us subconsciously. Even if I don't tell you that today, there are certain number sequences which will talk to you, which will make sense to you subconsciously. And again, you will go say Acha Laga, but then we'll have to dig deeper to understand Kyun Acha Laga. So geometry again, as I already mentioned, the architects are very obsessed with these beautiful plans, but also they are not irrelevant absolutely. Look at how they have been generated and they have been understood. And after understanding, we are now going reverse. We are trying to understand our ancient forefathers' minds and why they created and how they created. And they were superb in high-tech, as I will tell later. Another important point is the Sri Yantra. So Sri Yantra is a different object altogether, right? Why do we need to understand the Sri Yantra? But if you look at it, don't you find a similarity between the temple Shikhara and the Sri Yantra? Right? That is a 3D form. And now, if you think of it, if you look at this in the plan, this is the plan of the Sri Yantra. If you look at this in the plan, don't you see the temple Garbhagriha plan there? Vaguely. Yes. We can recreate, we can use this form to create. Now, this is all an endeavor to understand what our forefathers were thinking when they were building this. Now, there are various kinds of Sri Yantras, but what I want to focus on is, if you look at these, the left diagram, there are certain Sri Yantras overlapped and presented. Right? Look at the center diagram. That is the temple plan of Kandariya Mahadev in Khajuraho. Look at the right side diagram now. What is happening here? If you actually overlap these plans, can you not produce the temple plan? So I am guessing, could these have been the base of the temple structures? The starting point for planning the temple structures? We go further back. What do we see? I do see the circles emanating from the center, just like in the Sri Yantra, and look at the little pyramid that has been formed in the center. Right? Is there a correlation? Now, if you keep going back, gradually you will return to nature. Okay? Everything comes out of there. That is what is around us, and that is our basic inspiration for all of these beautiful structures. Now, taking this into consideration, if I have two drawings, we have these beautiful circles, concentric circles here, but look at what is happening in the overlapping section. Do you see that fish lens, vesica piscis shape in the intersecting areas? I'll tell you why this is relevant. Now, here, what is happening is, I have taken the Garbhagriha as one center and the Mahamandapa as the one center, right? And I have these two emanating circles. And now, where are they actually intersecting? Where is the vesica piscis eye shape forming? We are guessing it is the Antara, right? The right before the Garbhagriha. Now, in most of our temples, we don't really enter the Garbhagriha. Only in some temples we actually enter the Garbhagriha, right? In most temples we don't. We take the darshana from the Antara. We stand just outside it We take the darshan from there, and the circumambulatory region is outside the Garbhagriha. Correct? Why? Why is Antaral, such an unimportant area, becomes the main place where we are standing? It has to have some relevance. So Dr. Tanisha and I, we discussed about this, and we found that when these two emanating circles are merging, these are essentially energy centers. They are radiating energy. They are colliding in this Antaral region. And in the experience sense, that is the highest experience area. Now Antaral becomes the fisheye lens area, where the experience is highest. Now, if you understand what is happening, in the previous slides we were just talking visually. Now, there is some energy working on you subconsciously. You don't know this. This is all happening to us. Right? Acha laga, we are going towards that. Now, these are some images to understand how fractal geometry has been applied to understand this particular area. What I was just telling a few minutes back, that is, we should always consider it visually, how we experience, because this session is totally about temple experience and why we need to understand it. So how do we experience? In images. So what we've done here is we've just clicked a lot of images of same Khajuraho complex, and we've converted them into dot diagrams. These are all dot diagrams that you can see. Here what is happening is this gives us the amount of complexity that I was talking about. And these graphs actually show 1.9, 1.903. These are very, very high ranges of fractal dimension that we are talking about. So okay, just to give you a brief idea, 2 is the maximum when we are talking about in 2D forms, right? This is a 2D shape, and 2 therefore will become the maximum that is possible. So these images are giving us 1.9 fractal dimension, which is extremely high. Okay? This is how one kind of analysis is possible. Some more examples. This is how we've done. These are the plinth and the wall images of the temples. Another example is, we've taken the full elevation, then we've enlarged heart elevation, going further inside, zooming further in, and we've enlarged the third elevation. And strikingly, when you see, the fractal dimension remains constant. So I would assume that if I'm zooming something in, beyond a point it will become blank. Right? If I go deeper and deeper, if I keep scrolling and zooming, it should become blank and there should be nothing. But no, that doesn't happen in this case. This is where our forefathers were absolutely brilliant, and they were, in technology, they were far, far ahead of us. I just wanted to mention that stepwells might not come under this temple theme, but they should be looked at as inverted temples. Okay, and ideally, if you now think back, we have a temple structure which is the positive space, and there is a negative space around it, which is the atmosphere part. This essence is reversed in the stepwell symmetry. What is happening is the positive space reverses and becomes the negative space, and the negative space around it becomes the positive space. So basically, we are looking at a temple shikara from the inside is what a stepwell is, and the geometry and the complexity levels are matched here. The residing deity is something we should understand. One would feel that we are going into too much religion here. Why should I try to understand Shiva or Krishna or whoever the temple is built for? Why do I need to understand? This is not religion. This is trying to understand the characteristics of that personality which has to be depicted in the temple complex. And there is a different feeling generated. When it's a Shiva temple, you feel slightly different. In a Krishna temple, you will feel different. Hanuman temple, you feel different. Right? Those minor differences, once you know this background, we will be able to understand how it impacts us, and this is the reason we are thinking this way or we are feeling this way. This is my target for the whole today. Very, very important. Let's not use the word mythology, of course. This is ICTAAS. So ICTAAS mein, what all do we cover? The stories. The stories have meanings. The stories of characters. They have beautiful relationships with each other. And there are metaphors. There are connected, higher order symbolism connected to them. the reasoning behind it, why these characters were placed in the same room at this point of time, why Krishna and Pandavas were there at a certain point that this happened, why Draupadi had to be there, therefore this happened. People's perception. All the time it's about experience and how we see it. Pandavas happened, Krishna happened, Draupadi happened. But what is it to us? We will always argue about Ram should not have left Sita, arguable. Draupadi should not have been dragged this way. We have all these arguments, right? In today's day and age, we have all of these kind of arguments. This creates the people's perception. How we, as a third person, from a perspective, look at a particular situation. We have to understand it through our lens as well. And therefore, again I'm coming back to experience, you will all have different experiences when you visit the temple. Right? Because there is an our perspective concept involved in it. The element of my own perception because of the way I understand. Right? Their meanings, of course, and morals. Morals of those characters. Do we really understand Ram like it is meant to be? We have always debated Ram. Right? He is supposed to be Maryada Purushottam, but he is debatable. But Krishna, he has done all naughty things, but we debated less. Why? Because we are also partly naughty and we also do certain similar things. So more understandable. Is that happening? So therefore, our perception is extremely important. And our morals coming into between each other. Ornamentation. We are all the time looking at ornamentation. We forget about everything else when we visit these temples. Very important to understand the motifs and their meanings. This one here on the left is Kirtinu. There are some other motifs. If you look at the top left, what do you see? It's a beautiful design, right? But now we look closer, it is a lotus petal. Okay? Again, we are coming back to biomimicry. Everything comes down to nature when you keep going back, keep going back. That is our basic inspiration. That is the data we have within us. We are part of nature. Don't think that nature is around us. We are part of nature within us and around us. That is the basic data we have with which we develop everything else on this earth. The royal life, daily life, creatures and their meanings, and the metaphysical connotations. Metaphysical connotations will again be the stories associated with them and how we understand them. We have heard of Bhasma's story. Oh, Shiv should not have given that woman to him. He knew he was not a good guy. Right? Do we discuss this? Why did Shiv do certain things? Why did Bhasma if somebody can do tapasya for such a length, then he should be rewarded somehow, right? Open to discussion. But their metaphysical and metaphorical connotations are extremely important. These are some brilliant images which I just always enjoy looking at. Life and times. We have to understand when it was built and by whom. We have almost forgotten the artisans whose hands were really there involved. They are one more intervening aspect that affects our mind. How? I am an architect, I can make some drawings and give to the masons. But the masons are the people who will check the alignment there on site. This brick is aligned this way, this much plaster is required, this is the paneling I require here. I may give them the colors and textures and materials, but there is a hand of the mason which has the final say and the final impact of what we are experiencing. So, all textual evidence along with whatever has been carved, the life and times. See, some features. Do you think that the features, whether the eye is going to be so large or it's going to be mrignary eyes or droopy eyes, was directed? No, that's a mason's decision. Okay? So there are so many things that would matter here. History comes in stone, of course. Understand the requirement and relevance, why certain images were put up here. We always debate the erotic sculptures in Khajuraho especially, even though they are everywhere, we debate in Khajuraho more, right? So they are also part of life. Why have been they put there? Because all aspects of life have been put up there, okay? And understand society and their norms. The society was far very, very different back then. It is not as, very clear to say, it is not as conservative as today actually. So we understand and we discuss very different things. Acoustics. When we go in a temple, firstly, as you enter the temple from the Ardha Mandapa, that is the entrance foyer, to the Mahamandapa, then an Antaral, then the Garbhagriha. This is the basic format. Larger temples might have two mandapas of varying sizes. Right? So this actually creating the experience again. Now what is happening here is, when I am at the Ardha Mandapa, that is the entrance foyer, I can see something very dark inside, right? Now, that darkness suddenly, dilates my pupils because I am coming from outside the sun area, and I try to focus. So, Ardha Mandapa is the place when I try to figure out what's going on inside. Now I enter the mandapa. Okay. Now my eyes are almost accustomed to the light environment of the interior space, right? So now I can see what's going on. There are quite a few sculptures in the mandapa region, much lesser than the outside, mind you. Okay, much lesser sculptures. Then I go further inside. Okay, and even in the mandapa area when I'm standing, the Garbhagriha, inside Garbhagriha is only semi-lit. Now I proceed towards the Antaral. Now that I'm near the Antaral, or at the Antaral, where I have this beautiful circular emanating roof, and if you remember, the energy centers are clashing there. I am in a very high energy area, and now I can see the deity. Also, you cannot see anything else in the Garbhagriha, and it's not even carved. There are not major carvings except the deity. Okay? Now you focus. You only focus, and the temple structure is helping you by giving you beautiful energies. Right? So it's not that it was my concentration. No. The structure helped you. Major contribution by the structure. Lighting. These are some of the interior lighting spaces. So basically the metaphorical meaning here is the outside is beautifully lit with the sun, no doubt, and there is numerous sculptures there and all areas of life shown there. Now when you enter, from all shades of grey or pages I should say, we come down to more contrast. More contrast means more clarity. The metaphorical meaning here is life or things or whatever you are confused about becomes clearer and simpler and more discreet when you enter. Look at the beautiful contrast here. Some of these images actually will show very high contrast. So due to that, some carvings are hidden also, but this is the contrast that is needed in the interior spaces. This is the section of a standard temple, of a basic temple. This is the experience that I was talking about as we enter the temple. From the Ardha Mandapa to the Mandapa and to the Garbhagriha, with an Antaral in the middle. Number theory. Number theory I will not touch upon very deeply, as I have already talked about geometry and all other subjects. But number theory, as I was already mentioning, 108 is extremely important for us. There are 9 avatars, there are 9 Durgas, 8 Lakshmi, 10 avatars. So all of these numbers have various connotations and meanings associated with them. Right? You all must have seen definitely, if my Moolank is this, then this is what my personality looks like. Like you all watch those videos. How is that defined? Numbers have an impact. Numbers have meanings. Numbers have their own energies which they give us. Therefore, number theory is extremely relevant here, and it also talks about the sequence as I was already mentioned. Number theory applied can also be extended to music. Music, we also always have a taal, a rhythm, right? What is this rhythm? This is also number theory. This is math, okay? And the tune, the sur behind it will be the melody, okay? The meaning, which actually adds the meanings there or the experience there. Shastras are extremely important because these were the guiding base for the masons that I was just talking about some slides back. So there are various Shastras. This is far from the complete list. This is not even 1% though, but some very important ones which we should refer to when we are studying about temples. Symbolism and iconography. Now we are talking about experience and meanings and how we see and how we understand. But how do we understand? We understand because of the associated meanings, that is symbolism. As I have already mentioned, square, if square is earth, how is it earth? Because I told you that is the symbolism, right? Circle is sky, I told you that is the symbolism. Now that you see an overlapped square and circle, it makes more sense to us. These are some various basic symbols that we already know about and we relate to. There are numerous others. So to understand temples deeply, we have to dive deeper into some of these symbolism, and then we understand, oh, yahan pe located hai, therefore it means this. Same thing located somewhere else means something else, right? Symbolism also extends to, as I said, coming back to nature all the time. When you look at these beautiful shikara structures, we are reminded of the amazing Himalayas, the sky-soaring Himalayas, because when we are standing next to these temples, we actually have to raise our head and look up. We don't look at them like that. And inspiration from nature, extremely important. If you look at the right side image near the lotus, you will notice the bottommost row. You have these beautiful shapes. Won't that be the shape for water if we have to draw it? Right? And then there is the water kastar, the surface of water. And what is on the surface of water? Lotus. So this is how they have been depicted. This is just one tiny tip of the iceberg, and the temple walls are absolutely full of such details. Every inch you look at, this is what you will find. Just for example, the bottom left image. This is supposed to be Makar. Makar is at the Toran of the entrance. Why is this guy there? Because we are supposed to be all purified and clean before we enter the temple. And where does Makar live? In water. So symbolically, it is all water washed and clean as we are entering the temple. Right? So this is how all of these connotations are understood. And finally, perception. This is what we were all working towards all of this time. How does perception be created? We talked about spaces, transitions, already discussed light and sound, we talked about these, ornamentation, stories, and very, very important classical conditioning. Now when we go and visit these Khajuraho temples, we have already heard some stories from Dadi Nanis, right? We have had some discussions in our homes. We have that background. That is called classical conditioning. But when the foreigners come here, what kind of classical conditioning do they have? Very different from us. So their understanding, their perception, again, very, very different. Therefore, I really enjoy when Indians actually give their perception on temple architecture and research, because our background is something very different. It takes number of years to get that background, and we've been blessed by it. So thank you all for being in research in temple architecture. And metaphysics again, very important. Understanding the cosmology, understanding the universe, understanding the all of the star positions, how they impact us. We are of course going to hear more about it, but these are very, very important impacts. So essentially, Einstein had once said, and I really relate to this, the human mind was first to construct forms independently before we can find them in place. So therefore, I am telling you all that this is what this means. And now if you see a circle and a square, you will go and relate. Now when you see a Kirtimo or the Makar at the Toran, you will now remember what I said. So therefore, I am giving your mind all of this data so that now you can go and spot them. Thank you very much, everyone, for such a patient hearing. And I am really looking forward to the next two speakers.